In August, we had a speaker come and share his story with us from Texas. If y'all remember John A. That came. And luckily enough, he liked us so much, he came back again today. He's traveling with the speaker here. So he's actually going to introduce the speaker that's Danny B. is also from Texas. And just a little side note, John is celebrating 42 years today.
Good evening, after evening, guys. Good to see you. My name's John Allred, and I am an alcoholic. And by the grace of God, I have not had a drink of alcohol or mood-altering drugs since October 7th, 1981. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. And I was assigned from New York as Danny's truth detector. He does have a problem with that. And so they sent me down here from New York to monitor what he says, make sure it's true. I could talk for 2 hours about Danny Brown. He's one of my favorite people in the world. We used to be roommates, and I know a lot about him. He knows a lot about me, and I know enough to realize that no matter what I say, Danny has an hour to repudiate it. So I'm not going to say anything bad about him because there's not much to say bad. We were roommates. Off and on. Every time Danny would get divorced, he'd move in with me, which was pretty regular, you know. And we had a great time, and we have a lot of good friends, a lot of good memories of that. He lives in Houston, Texas now. We both have the same amount of time, 42 years. Don't let him deceive you, tell you he's got more time than me. We have 42 years each, and you're in for a treat. Of all the people I know, he speaks all around the world. He'll be in Canada later this year, this winter, and he makes a wonderful talk, and it's all about Alcoholics Anonymous. You won't hear any fluff. You won't hear anything that's not true because it's all based on his experience of what he went through and what he's done. And that's what AA is all about. I don't want to hear any theories in AA. I don't want to hear anything about how we're going to do this or do that. I want to hear what you did, what happened, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. And that's what we're about to hear. So Danny B., come tell him.
I'm well into my 43rd year. I have 231 days on him, and I don't bring it up too often. Well, I'm completely out of things to say. I went. What is that? What is that thing we rode in? Polaris. And rode up a mountain and stuff. Fast. And I tried to act cool the whole way. That was my first time to do that. I actually had a lot of fun. I thank Corey for letting us do that, and I want to thank you guys for inviting me up. I don't live in Houston. I live in Spring, and which is, you really can't tell the difference. My name is Danny, and I'm an alcoholic. Amen. And I've had the gift of sobriety since February the 18th of '81. And John, it really isn't it's really quite amazing to suddenly wake up one day and find out, one, that you're sober so many years, and two, that you're old. You know. Because I wasn't. I mean, in Midland where I came in, they used to call me Mrs. Brown's little boy Danny. They don't do that anymore. And I usually tell a joke because it helps me relax. So I'm going to tell this, and if you've heard it before, don't stop me because I want to hear it again. And I like it. I like the joke because it's the only one I can remember. But there's this lady that walks into a pharmacy. She walks into a pharmacy and she goes up to the pharmacist and says, "I'd like to buy some arsenic." And he said, "What for?" She said, "Well, I'm going to poison my husband." He said, "Ma'am, you can't walk in here and say something like that. They'd put us both in jail." So she reached in her purse and pulled out a picture of her husband and his wife in bed together and handed it to him. And he said, well, that's different. I didn't know you had a prescription. You know? So I want to say, if I don't say anything else, I want you to know this. I absolutely love Alcoholics Anonymous. I live, breathe, and eat it. It's my way of life. It has been for 42 plus years, and I intend to stay this way. This has been the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I walked into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous 44 years ago, and what I got was a cup of coffee and a brand new life. Now, that 44 years ago, that's what it was like in November of '79 when I came into AA, and I call that my been around date, you know, because I got a lot of times I would come to AA and I liked it, but I didn't like the staying sober part. I liked the people, but you know, a week of staying sober could be a lot. But I would come to AA a lot and get Desire chips and, you know, meet people and you know, I give it a real college try every once in a while to try to stay sober. And the old timers come up to you and say, how long have you been sober now? You know, and I tell them, well, I've been sober, you know, 22 days. But I've been around since, you know, and I tell them, because I didn't want you to think that just because I was drinking that I didn't know what we were doing here. You know, to me, there was some street cred involved. I needed you to be able to look up to me to see that, you know, he's got some sobriety. In AA, we kind of lose sight of the fact that it's the quality that we're looking for, not the quantity. Quality will produce quantity. That's been my experience. You can be sober 42 years. You can be sober 1 year 42 times, and there's no need for that. You can get weller than well in Alcoholics Anonymous. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, John ruined it all for me, but I had been married several times. But when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was on my fourth wife. I was about 34 years old, and I'd just gotten out of prison again, and things were not going well at all. I had quit reporting to my parole officer because I didn't have anything good to report. My wife had a boyfriend, which I thought was going to ruin our marriage. And she was a bartender, and I'm having to stay up and watch her tend bar to keep her faithful. And so I can't hold down a job. And so I got hot checks out because you need money to keep that kind of life going. And I had my truck repossessed, so I had stole a car. It was a terrible car. The guy didn't even want it back. You know, it was awful, and it's stressful. And wow, that side's leaving. Anyway, I'm living in a stolen car. I don't have any place to live, and I started wearing an eye patch. There wasn't anything wrong with my eye. I just thought I looked pretty cool and mysterious, and I look back on my life. At that time, by this time that's happened, I had been married on my fourth marriage. I'd been married to two women at the same time, which is very stressful. And I'll never forget the day that I got married to the second one. We were both drunk. Called my mom and said, "Mom, I'm married." And she said, "I know." And I said, "I don't know how you could. I just did it." And she said, "Oh my God, Danny, you have a wife." And I thought, details. I'm a big picture guy. You know? I don't think about little things like that. You know, I'm the guy that will shoot arrows into a wall and then go paint bullseyes around them and then congratulate myself on being a good shot. But the day I came into Alcoholics Anonymous it's been all this time, and I still just can't believe it happened. Because I was a guy that had nothing, was going nowhere, no education, been to penitentiary twice, been in jail in Mexico, failed out of everything I'd ever done, lived on Skid Row. I drank, I did other things. I pretty much stick to my drinking because that's just, I was raised that way, and I believe that. For me, alcoholism is primary, permanent, and progressive. Under everything that I was doing, everything that was going on, everything that I thought was the problem, alcohol was my solution. I would quit drinking for a while, and I'd quit drinking, and what would happen to me is I'd just start to get like wound up really tight. My head would start racing. I'd start thinking bad thoughts about everybody, you know, and my foot would start to pat, and I'd start thinking, I gotta go. I don't know where I gotta go, and I don't know why I gotta go, but I know I gotta go. And I just gotta get out of here. And that drove me all my life. And what would calm me down, I try to figure out what have I got to do to set things right, and I'd have to take a drink. I'd take a drink, and the drink takes a drink, and you're off to the races. I'm like Billy Smith. I'm the guy that drinks when he's already drunk, you know, and I don't know why. And my first drink was that I remember. Well, I was 14 years old. I stole my mother's car. I'd just gotten out of a mental institution, and I stole her car and went down hanging out where the cool guys were. Actually, I was 15. I take that back. And I went down to this restaurant. I was all dressed up like you're supposed to. I looked the part. I wanted to fit in with the other kids. And they were down here driving around in circles, drinking beer. And as soon as I got there, my mom had this big station wagon, Ford station wagon. It was not a cool car. And I had my sleeves rolled up. Back then, we wore white T-shirts with jeans with the cuffs rolled up, and people rolled their cigarettes up in their sleeve. And so that's what I'd done, because I see how everybody dresses, and I want to look the part. But my arms are real skinny, so they kept unrolling. And I don't smoke, and those are my dad's cigarettes, and so I'm picking them up. And so when I get there, you know, it's not working. I'm not going to have a good time with these guys. And I start to take off and leave, and I'm really embarrassed. And one of the guys came over and started talking to me, and he offered me a drink. And I took it because I wanted to be a part of. I just wanted to be one of the guys. And I took a drink. Nothing really happened. I took a few more drinks, and all of a sudden, I had this really incredible experience where I just unwound. I could dance, I talk, I could be a part of. I could have a good time. I was interesting, and that was probably at that time in my life. That was the most spectacular night of my life. I mean, there was nothing like it. There was a few things that went wrong. I got my nose broke, I puked on myself, wrecked my mother's car, and I went to jail. But other than that, it was a perfect evening. I had a lot of things happen. They sent me back to the Big Spring State Hospital. I escaped. We had a big thing about all that, but they had locked me up and told me if I tried to escape, they'd give you shock treatments. So I'm sitting there being cool, and one day they're walking us from the ward we lived on to the cafeteria, and here sits a car running. And it's not locked. I mean, is that odd or is that God? You know? I grabbed the two guys my two best friends. They were getting shock treatments. And I said, let's go. And we jumped in the car, took off, went to Midland, Texas. There in Midland, we picked up two more guys who should have been in that hospital. And I have a plan. We're going to Mexico. It's going to solve our problem. We're just going to get out of the state. So we head south to Mexico. And as we head south to Mexico, we stop in mom and pop places and create a diversion so we can get food, drink, and gas up. And if you're escaped mental patients, you know, creating a diversion is no problem. But as we're going south, those guys' meds begin to wear off, and it became clear they were in that hospital for a reason. But at every stop, it seemed like that it was increasingly more difficult for me to gather my gang up and get them back in the car. But we got across the border into Mexico, and I sold that car to a taxi driver for a few hundred pesos, which I thought was a lot of money. And we go to the Cadillac bar. We're at the Cadillac bar. We're having a drink, and this is when I realized I'm completely out of plan. And all of a sudden, there's this big commotion. And one of the guys that I brought with me had just killed a parrot that belonged to a lady that worked down there. And, it was a hell of a fight. And I realized we were in trouble because here come the federales and the local police, and I grabbed these guys and said, we got to get back to Texas. And we ran for the international border, and they caught us on the Mexican side, and we went to jail in Mexico. That's what I said. In the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, it says that the alcoholic's problems can pile up on him and become astonishingly difficult to solve. So this was one of those instances that bore that truth out, because I'm not bilingual. I didn't know how to tell these people I want my mother. But we're in jail in Mexico for an extended period. My mother did eventually find me, brought me back, had a family meeting in West Texas. My dad said, I think he's about to turn 17. When he does, we're going to have him join the Navy. They'll make a man out of him. I wanted to say to my dad, I'm an escaped mental patient. But the Navy apparently had very low standards. And the day I turned 17, I was sworn in the Navy. I became a CB. I liked being in the military because we all wore the same clothes. It was cool. I was big, strong. I liked to drink, and I could drink you under the table. I liked to fight. I was angry about a lot of things, and when I got drunk, it came out. And we island hopped around the Pacific, and the more I drank, the more I began to realize that something's wrong here, because I see what happens to other guys. They get drunk, they pass out, they're back at work the next day. I get drunk, there's no telling where I'm going to show up. I mean, I may just go AWOL. I may stay at the club and fight. It just depends. And I feel different, and I'm starting to isolate, and I don't want to hang out with anybody, so I drink alone, and I start changing what I drink. I quit drinking tequila because I behaved very poorly. And I would try to drink beer, and I'd drink beer till I'd forget about what tequila did, and I'd be back at it. And we're just, and I'm not even 20 years old yet, and I'm full-blown alcoholic. And I don't know what's wrong with me. But what happened for me is in Guam, I got drunk with some British sailors. And when they closed the Club Macombo, which is the enlisted man's club in Guam, they invited me to their ship. And I don't know how I got on, but apparently I got on. I can tell you that, because the next morning I woke up and they were headed out to sea. And this is a real problem, because they always have a muster, when they go out to sea, and they count their sailors, and they had too many. And it was pretty clear who wasn't British. But we weren't that far out. They sent a launch out. Shore Patrol comes to get me, brings me back. I go to the brig before the captain. And I'm humiliated. I wanted to be a good sailor. I wanted to succeed. I wanted to show my dad that I was a man that could stand up and be counted. But here I was falling apart already, and I just retreated in myself, and it was full of anger, and it was everybody's fault. I just didn't get a good chance. My folks married too early. My mom and dad married during the Second World War. My mother was 15 years old when I was born. My dad went off and fought in the Second World War, and when he came back, he was an angry guy, and rightly so from what he'd seen. And when I was young, I was the apple of his eye. He used to take me to bars with him, and I liked hanging out with him. He was like he was my dad. He's a big, strong guy. He'd get drunk, he'd be fun. He gets sober, he's sullen. And so I'm hanging out with him and going places, and I'm just a little guy. And I have a memory of having him hold me to his bare chest and pat my head. And just, me feeling on a very visceral level, everything's going to be okay. I'm with my dad. And he quit drinking because my mother threatened to leave him because of the way he behaved. And overnight, he became this angry workaholic, explosive. I didn't know what went wrong, but I suddenly wasn't the favorite kid. I was yelled at a lot, and I just shut down. I don't blame my dad and my mother for anything, but that was just where we were as we came into life. It helped kind of form who I was. But I had alcoholism, in a way, and I thank God that I did, because if I hadn't found booze, I'd have probably died long before, because alcohol helps me to resolve guilt. It helps me to resolve conflict. It helps me to say that it's not really my fault, it's yours, and it's okay, and I can sit and I can live in a fantasy world, and I know that I may have a hangover, but it isn't going to be today. I followed my dad's footsteps. I joined the Navy and wound up in that mess. And I get back to the States. I get drunk and go AWOL. They bring me back. I attempted suicide. It wasn't a very serious attempt, but I attempted suicide. And they took me to Camp Pendleton, and that's when they found out they had an escaped mental patient. And they made a deal with me, and I got a general discharge under honorable conditions, and I was released to the streets, and I went straight to Los Angeles, and I lived downtown LA, and I learned to lie, cheat, and steal, and I learned the difference between selling plasma and selling blood. I learned that all-night theaters don't stay open all night. All-night theaters stay open until about 4 in the morning, and then they'll come in with hoses and brooms and say, all them winos, get out. And they hose the place down. And you go out and you got no place to go. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do, where you got to be, you just walk the streets and look for a way to hustle, a way to make money. And I'd call my mom and I'd plead with her to get me out of this. And she would send me money and I'd get drunk. And we did that over and over again. And the last time she sent it to me, I begged her. She sent me the money, and I'm going to the Greyhound bus, and I am just delighted. This is it. I'm getting out of here. I passed the bar. I saw the mirror across behind the bar. I heard the music, and I remember thinking, I want a Manhattan. I didn't even know what a Manhattan was. But I went in, and I ordered a drink, and I came out that morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, dead broke, nowhere to go. Eventually, I got out of LA, and I went back to Texas, and I tried to work for my dad, but he had a company, but I'm an entitled, angry, explosive alcoholic. And I started using methamphetamines. It wasn't methamphetamine, back it was speed, because I could drink more, I could stay up, I could go. So I'm getting really psychotic. And I met up with some guys, because I couldn't make a living, I couldn't hold down a job. So I met up with some guys at a bar that they were stealing out of the oil field, and they all carried guns and had girlfriends and drank Crown Royal out of the bottle. And I thought, I'd like to be like that. So they needed help, and I interviewed for the job. I got it, and it wasn't long till I had a gun, I had a car, a girlfriend, and I'm ripping and running, and I drank Crown Royal, and I think everybody's got to be something, and this is me. And but in about 6 months, the Texas Rangers show up, and they arrest everybody, and everybody goes to prison but me. I got a probation because I didn't have any felonies. I got a probation. They said, all you have to do is live down the terms of this probation. Don't drink. Don't hang out with those kind of people. Hold down a job, pay back the money, and this will be expunged from your record. And in jail, with everything that's in me, I wanted that more than anything else in the world. I want this. I'm definitely done. They got out. I got a job. I'm working at a gas station. I pump gas. I've lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks I'm sitting there, and this guy's sitting. I remember he's bald-headed, and I'm just sitting there pumping his gas, and I thought, he can pump his own damn gas. And I just left the nozzle running, and I went into the cash register and made a cash advance. I went across the street to a bar. I took a drink, and when I came to, I was in Dallas. And I did what we do, you know. I went on the run. I started hiding, and pretty soon I met some more guys in Dallas, and we're ripping and running, and it's not long till my picture is up around town. They're looking for me and several others. And there's a task force out trying to arrest us. And my dad's humiliated. My dad, for all that he was an honest man. His word was his bond. He did not believe in stealing and lying. And he was, you know, they'd ask my dad, where's Danny? And he'd say, Danny who? And turn around and walk off. And my mother she just knew it was her fault. And I thought it was too. And she didn't know what to do. And my brothers, who at one time, my younger brothers, I'd been the apple of their eye. And they were afraid of me, and they were ashamed because everybody was talking about me. And they eventually arrested me. I got 13 5-year sentences, and I was sent off to Texas Department of Corrections. And what I can tell you about doing time in Texas in the 60s, it's time consuming. You know, but I made up my mind this time, when I get out, I'm done. This is it. I finally learned my lesson. I write my mother letters. She believes me. I believe me. I'm never, ever drinking whiskey again, except on special occasions. Turns out getting out of prison is a special occasion. My mom come to get me, made that 400-mile trip, she stopped, and everybody's in a great mood. I don't know what I did there. Everybody's in a great mood, and we're headed back to home with everything's going to be different. It's going to be good. I stopped and bought a half pint of whiskey. And I remember that thing going down and hitting my stomach, and that burn, and I just hit that sweet spot. I want to stop and talk to everybody. I'm doing great. My mom looked at me and she said, "Son, what you need is a wife, a kid, a car, a bank account, job, and a house, and you'll be okay." So when we got back to Texas, Midland, Texas, I went looking for a woman that had kids, a bank account, a car, and a job, and I found her. And my mother was wrong. That was the worst 2 weeks of my life. And she was the one I was married to when I married the other one. The second one I married, we eventually got a divorce because after my mom found out that I had committed bigamy, we got on a bus and went to her home, which was in McAllister, Oklahoma. And it turns out that her father was the warden in McAllister State Penitentiary. Well, I was very, very uncomfortable in that relationship. So I absconded, which means to move in a secret way. And I made it back to Texas. And I met a gal and I married her. I always marry them because I don't like believing in living in sin. And I met a girl and I married her. And we were in love. The moment we saw each other, we were like totally in love, 100%. And you don't usually fall in love to that depth until you get to a treatment center. But we were together for 3 years, and things just got really hectic. Long and short of it is I go back to penitentiary for 10 years. Go back to penitentiary for 10 years, and when I get out, this time it's going to be okay. This time I'm scared, and I know drinking now is a problem, but I still think conditions cause me to be this way. This is not something that I can't control. I have poor moral fiber. I'm a liar, I'm a cheat, I'm a thief, all these things. But if I could just settle down and pay off some debts and get a good job, I ought to be able to drink a little beer. And that was that important to me. My life fell apart. I married a bartender. Of course I did. I married a bartender. She had a boyfriend, and we got in a fight one morning. I had hepatitis, and I was skinned by parole officers looking for me. I had hot checks everywhere. I'm wearing an eye patch. My life is a total wreck, and we know that I'm going back to penitentiary. It's just a matter of time, because that's just what I do. And she kicked me out of her car in downtown Midland, and this was before cell phones. And I looked up, I saw this nondescript gray building. I walked up to that building, and I stuck my head in the door because I wanted to use the phone, call a friend, save my marriage. And those people were sitting over the corner. They were smoking, playing cards, and drinking coffee. And when they saw me, they were very happy to see me. And they invited me in, and they started saying things to me like, if you don't drink, you won't get drunk. And I thought, well, I think you're right. I'm not sure where you're going with that. I just want to use the phone. And they said, look, if you'll stay for a meeting, we'll give you a ride. And I said, well, okay. So I stayed for this meeting, and it was a lot longer than I thought it should be. And people, you'd call on people to come up to the podium, and they'd say something awful about themselves, their lives, what losers they were. And I'd sit there and think, I've got to get out of here. I got to go. And they stood up when it was over and held hands and said the Lord's Prayer. And by this time, my foot's patting, my head's racing, and I'm thinking, I got to go, and I'm heading for that back door. And all of a sudden, that place parted like the Red Sea. And here come a little dour-looking fellow with a flat top and a young guy with him heading right straight for me. I saw him coming, and I thought, oh, hell no, I ain't going anywhere with him. And he walked up to me and said, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to Baskin-Robbins for ice cream. Would you like to go? And I thought, Baskin-Robbins for ice cream. Be still my beating heart. There is no way on God's green earth I'm going off with a bunch of geriatrics for ice cream while my wife is out with her boyfriend. That ain't happening. But what came out of my mouth was, sure, I'd love to go. So I wound up over at Baskin Robbins holding the melting Rocky Road ice cream while you guys pitched me on Alcoholics Anonymous. And I would ask you, do you think I'm alcoholic? And immediately you start telling me all about yourself. And I thought, what a bunch of self-centered people. I don't even care. I don't care if you're alcoholic. I just know, I want to know if you think I am. I'm a bottom line guy. I'm not reading that whole big book. I want to go to the answers. I'll see if there's something pertinent, but we need to do this quick because I'm in trouble. And I'm in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, and my folks know I'm living in Midland. When I'm living in Midland, they keep their house locked because they know I'll take their stuff and hawk it or sell it, you know. And I got drunk. And wound up somehow I got the couch off from my ex-wife. I got it out. She's having a party, and apparently I was able to raid the party and make everybody get off the couch, and I took it. And I wound up out in a cornfield. My dad had a cornfield, and I was laid out in that cornfield on that couch when I came to. And man, mouth's dry, you know. God, I'm thirsty. By noon, my mom always kept the backside door. She kept it unlocked. My dad didn't know it. He wouldn't have it. But my mom couldn't bear the idea that I couldn't come in and clean up. So I went in there to get a drink of water and clean up. And there was a little cassette player there. And I'm sitting there, and I look over. Normally, I wouldn't mess with it. But I went over and I just hit it and turned it on. And a guy named Johnny Harris came on, and Johnny said, a little over 22 and a half years ago, he'd been crawling around on his hands and knees in solitary confinement. And that he didn't know how he got there, and he didn't know why he was there, and he didn't know what to do about it. And he just remembered just walking around, going around in that cell trying to feel for something. He said, I was looking for something, but I don't even know what I was looking for. I've had that exact 100% experience. And here he is. He's talking to a bunch of people that are round up in Lubbock, Texas. He's cleaned up and he's got respect. He has a job. He just put a nail in my coffin, where the lies that I told myself that I could never have anything, I could never be anything because of all I've been through. I went running from one place to the other, running from my past, wound up in Austin, Texas. And in Austin, Texas, I've been in AA now. I've been around AA for long enough. I got AA speak down. So I go to AA meetings, and I know the girls. I'm able to pick out the ones that probably be helpful. And when they passed the basket, they had a saying, they said, if you have $1, put one in, and if you don't, take one out. And after I got there, they quit that. And I was also the guy that anytime anything was to be said, I had something to say. I was a smart ass. I was a know-it-all. I knew that every person in there wanted me to get sober, but I know they were thinking, does he have to do it in our club? I got angry at the last meeting I went to over God knows what. Went out and got in that old car, and I went over and I said, God, if you don't want me to drink, fine, you stop me. I went into a store to buy cigarettes. I had a carton in the back seat. I came out with a 6-pack of beer. I started drinking, and I went on a week-long binge. I came to, I was puking blood and bile. I was in the back, a pretty tough part of town. And I just felt like everything good and decent in life was just eroding away, that I was just falling and there was no bottom. In California, they have a saying, there's a bottom below the bottom you know. I don't know if that was true, actually. I think you can slip off the edge and there isn't a bottom. And I just cried out for the first time that I can remember. I said, God, I'd do anything if I could get sober. 2 guys came to get me from that club. And that guy had come to get me many times. His name is John Henry McDonald. I'll break his head and empty. He does it all the time. And he's one of my heroes. John Henry came to get me, and I'm riding in that car, and I said, John, what am I going to do? And he said, Danny, if you don't drink, you won't get drunk. I said, how do I do that? He said, well, don't drink right now. And then when it's right now again, don't drink then either. And that kid said, yeah, and pretty soon you'll have like a minute. And John Henry said, don't pay any attention to him. He said, let me tell you something. Those minutes will turn into hours. The hours will turn into days, weeks, months, years. You join us in this thing we do, and you find yourself a sober, self-respecting member of Alcoholics Anonymous with a host of friends, a purpose in life, and a relationship with the power that runs this universe. And I'm telling you, drunk on the way to the club, I was smitten with a magnificent obsession for sobriety. I wanted to be with you like you more than anything else in the world. I'm all in. All of a sudden, I'm coming to the club now, and I'm, instead of coming in and disrupting, I'm coming in and I'm listening. I'm coming in and I'm sitting quiet, and I don't have any place to be, so I sleep out in that car, and I get up by going to that club as soon as it opens, and I help set up. And it wasn't long till one of the old timers came up, and he said, "You're doing good, kid," and he gave me a big box of AA speaker tapes and a cassette, and I'd ride around in that car and play those tapes, and I'd laugh and cry. And one day I just said, I always saying, let go and let God. And I let go and let God do what? And then I thought, John Henry will know. I drove up to that club, and he was standing out there drinking a cup of coffee. And I got out of the car, and as I was walking toward him, I said, John Henry, I'm alcoholic. He said, oh yeah, you are. He said, come on in this house. He said, you come on in. And we went back to the little back room, and he told me about himself, and I listened. And he wasn't anything like what I thought he'd be like, and he listened to me. And he didn't judge me, he didn't put me down, and he said, son, people like you have no chance of getting sober and staying sober, except that something inside happens to you that will come from inside. That's something that God can do. And I said, I don't really believe in God. And he said, I don't care what you believe in. He said, Danny, if we really wanted your opinion, we'd come out that old stolen-ass car and ask you. But nobody really wants what you have. So why don't you just put everything aside and do what we ask you to do? And we talked about the first few steps, the first three. When it was over with, he said, I want you to get on your knees and say this third step prayer. And I said, here? I mean, like there's people around. He said, they were around when you were drunk. You can do this sober. I got on my knees and I said that prayer. He said, I want you to write an inventory. I said, I don't know how. He said, read what it says in the book. I read it. That's how. And I went and I checked in a Motel 6 and I wrote an inventory, and it was pages and pages long. And probably most of it was just vomit. It wasn't nothing searching and fearless moral inventory for the first few pages. It was just a whole lifetime of shame, fear, aggravation. And I went and I shared that all with him. And he said, son, what's evolved here is a liar, a cheat, and a thief, and probably one of the most egotistical, self-centered people I've ever met. And if you want to continue down that path, you don't need any help. But if you want to be like us, there's more that you need to do. And I want you to go down to Town Lake, and I want you to think about what you've told me, and then come back, and we're going to do steps 6 and 7. I got out in Town Lake, and I stepped out of that car, and I felt this power just wash over me and through me, and I felt clean and lifted up. And it's like, wow, there's a God, and he's not mad at me. And I mean, it stayed with me for hours. And I'm going to go to the club. I'm going to start chairing meetings. I'm straightening the old timers out. I mean, I'm on fire, man. And so I'm in AA, and I'm a 12-stepping fool. If you call, I'm heading to get you, and I'm excited for you. I'm excited for what's going to happen in your life, because it happened to me, and it'll happen to you. But there were some things that I didn't want to talk about. I'd made up my mind that I was going to live undercover in Alcoholics Anonymous, because guys like me don't go around making amends, because there's things that I did that will lock you up for the rest of your life or shoot you. And I lasted about 6 months being Mr. AA, and I started having a meltdown. And I started having my head racing, and I got to go. And I just called John Henry, and I said, man, I can't do it. I got to go. He said, why don't you meet me at the club? So I met him at the club, and he said, Danny, he said, what's standing between you and that God that you experienced are the things on your 8-step list. I said, well, there's some things I didn't tell you. He said, what are they? I said, well, one, I live in a stolen car. He said, well, now that's a problem. And the other one is, in the summer of 1980, there was a bank robbery in San Angelo, Texas, and they got it on videotape, and they're looking for me. He said, well, son, you have to go in and clean that up. I said, oh, no. Oh, hell no. He said, you told me when we started this that you were willing to go to any length to have this gift. I said, that's theory. This is serious. They will lock me up the rest of my life. He said, well, get you another sponsor because you will not make it with that. I went out and sat in that car, and I just sat down, and I had a meltdown, and I just looked up, and I said, God, I want to do it, but I'm too afraid. And all of a sudden, I just had this sense of peace, and I had an epiphany that four walls do not make a prison. Prison is something you carry around on the inside of you, and I had the keys to the kingdom. I could run like I always did, or I could face my life and be willing to surrender my physical freedom to have the freedom that you have. And so the next day, I went to the robbery department. I went to the Austin Police Department. I parked that car a long ways away. And I went in there and I told them who I was. And man, my heart was racing. I mean, I just know I'm headed back to the joint. And they sent me upstairs to the robbery department, and the guy asked me who I was, and I told him. And he said, we've been wanting to talk to you. And I said, I know. And he said, where you been? And I told him all about my good AA work, you know. And, you know, buy what you can. The big book says make the best deal possible, and that's the best I could come up with. And he played that video, and it was a grainy video, probably 15 seconds long, of a tall, skinny guy with a beard, like I was wearing, going from till to till. And second time he played it, my heart sunk, and I thought, I'm in so much trouble. I wonder what I did with the money, because I was in the area, and I'm a blackout drinker. I have no memory of this whatsoever, but that is my MO. And he turned around and looked at me, and he said, the guy I'm looking for would not walk in here. He said, the guy I'm looking for is out there, and we'll find him. He said, but you need to get your skinny butt back to AA, and maybe you can do something about the mess you've created. Now get out of here. I said, I'm in AA forever. I'm not afraid of making amends. I'll make your amends. I don't care. You know, I'm good to go. And that started my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous. Half measures really do avail you nothing. Eventually, that thing you carry around on the inside, that secret that you have, that thing that's just not okay for you to get out, will eat you up. That thing, that situation in the past that you think you can't get right, if you just make that effort, it'll set you free. I live in a big house with this big swimming pool and 3 big dogs. I'm a big dog guy. I love dogs. I'm married, well, you would know I would be. It's not my first sober marriage either, but I've been with this girl for 5 years. She walked up to me when I was 5 years ago, and she said, I've had a crush on you for 2 years. And I said, really? I said, she was 33. I said, do you have any idea how old I am? And I told her, and she said, I don't care. I'm a hospice nurse. I said, I'm going to need one of those. And so she's an old woman, you know. We get along great. And we've been together all this time, and things are great. And a year ago, I called John, and I said, John, I have a problem. Dawn's pregnant. And so we have a kid. I love doing this. I like to gather groups of people and, get really emotional in front of them. It's one of my kinks. Sometimes I think I'll go to the mall and just get everybody together and bawl for you. But his name is Rhett, and he's real healthy, and he's 7 months old, and I'm tired. I was so excited. You invited me to come out here to speak, and I said, oh, hell yes, I'll be there. Yeah, I mean, he's crawling the walls, but I put him to sleep at night. So you can't write your story. You don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know how everything's going. I know this. The moment that I decided that God would run my life, I have done I'm sober and doing well despite myself. I'm not sober and doing well because I have become this really great AA tactician who knows all the words. I used to know all the words, but I didn't hear the music. You know what I'm saying? But I hung out with you one day, and I told you how I got honest, and I told you I was hurting. I told the guy I was hurting, and he said, son, you know, you've switched places with God. And I was sober 17 years. And I got all into I want to get what you have again. I had let the gift slip away. And I joined AA. And I've spoke all over the world because the reason I speak out, by the way, it's because of John. John had a concussion in '95 or something like that, and that's when you could just take a ticket and hand it to somebody. They didn't have any TSA, and he couldn't go speak, so he told me, so I think Danny will do okay, and they handed me the ticket, so I went to speak, and I've been doing it ever since. And it's been amazing because I've met so many of you people all over the world, and we're just so much alike. I'd like to tell you something deep and insightful, but I'm going to tell you this. If you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, welcome to the fastest growing organization in the world no one wants to join. But if you're an alcoholic and an addict or whatever, if you are like me, there's no better place in the world. There's more information about about what to do, what's wrong with us here, more power to get it done by average people. Nobody here knows what the hell to do. Everybody thinks this is a cult. It is. But our leader's dead, and so we don't, so we just take turns trying to be in charge, so it's a very benign thing. It seems like if you come here and you stay, just come as you are, and amazing things will happen to you. John and I we've been close friends for, I don't know, 30 years, something like that, and we have driven on the streets of Dallas and cried over our girlfriends or wives, and cried over our frustration of not being able to get it. What is it that everybody's doing that I'm not doing that makes it magically right? I'll tell you what you do. Don't quit. Don't quit before the miracle, and don't quit after the miracle either. You just keep showing up. You keep praying. You keep in concert with other people. Talk to them. Don't sit alone. Isolation will kill you deader than a hammer. I want to tell you about my dad before I sat down, because I nearly always do. I went to make amends to my dad after all of that stuff. And when I went to see him, he said, "That's fine, son. Glad you're sober. Good luck." Where we had been really close when I was a kid, and he'd held me like that. Now it's like, he just want to sweep it under the rug. And there was this gulf between us. No matter what I said or did, it didn't change things. And I came to you and I said, how do I fix this? How do I make this right with my dad? And you said, you continue to be a good son and a good member of AA. You hold down a job. You learn how to live life in a way that he will be proud of. Do what you're supposed to do, and don't do what you're not supposed to. And remember, if it's almost right, it's wrong. Do these things and it'll change your life, and things will work out in God's time. I was 20 years sober, and I went to Midland, Texas for a business thing, and I was spent the night at my folks' house. I went to an AA meeting in the same club that I came in. And when I came back out of that meeting, I went to my folks' house and walked in. My mom was waiting up on me like she always did. And my dad was back in the room. And I saw him back there, and he just, time had worn him down. He wasn't this big, strong, handsome guy anymore, you know. And I asked my mom, I said, is he asleep? And she said, he's just pretending to be. And so I walked back into his room, and on an impulse, I leaned down and I kissed him on his old bald head. And before I could pull up, he reached up and pulled my head to his bare chest. And he patted my head, and he said, I didn't know what to do, boy. I said, me neither, Pop. He said, those people in AA, I hope you'll always remember to tell them how much we appreciate what you've done for our family. And I tell him I always do. I've told that story around the world. I'm going to tell you, you healed my family. You didn't just give me sobriety, but you set my family right. You know, dysfunction doesn't mean broken. A dysfunctional family functions. It's just painful. But the moment that one of us gets set straight, that's just like we're that one cog that will affect the rest of the machine. It may take time, but it'll put things in order. You quit being the problem, they'll find somebody else in the family that is. You know, and they'll call you up and say, well, you know, old Bill, you know. But you will have learned not to say anything back. Love and tolerance is our code. We live by that 10, 11, and 12. We spend our time trying to have a relationship with God and with his kids. And it's been the most amazing thing in the world. I'm so blessed to be able to get up every morning to a kid that has crapped his pants. I've never done this. I've never had kids. You know, I'm going to plan on staying around till he graduates from kindergarten. You know, I enjoy every moment, every tearful, screaming moment. Every time I go to Alcoholics Anonymous and sit with one of you and I listen to you talk, I enjoy that. I have men that come to my house on Wednesdays and we talk. I have men that call me every day, you know, over the most inane nonsense, and I laugh and I get over myself. You've taught me how to laugh and how to have a relationship with God, and I thank you so much for that. And unlike John, I'm not going to wind up talking so long that I'll wind up in On and On Anonymous. So you guys are great. I love you, and good luck to you.
You know, like Danny said, when they got here, me and Neil and Danny and John, we went up Hobble Creek off Left Fork in a Razor and took them on a Razor ride. And when they got out of the car, you know, I knew John was old, and when Danny, both of them got out of the car at my house, I'm like, well, they're both old. Let's see if we can scare them. And so when we started going up there, that was my goal, was to scare them. And when I saw Danny reach over and grab the old crap bar and John yelling swear words behind me, I'm like, mission accomplished. But on the way up there, we were driving and we were, you know, going up the canyon, and Danny pulled out his phone and showed me a picture of the baby. And I'm like, oh, is that your grandbaby? He's like, no. I'm like, great grandbaby? Like, no. And he's like, and he points to me. I'm like, great. We brought a guy in that's full of shit. There's no way that is your baby. And seriously, and it's loud in the Razor. I'm like, for the next minute or so, I'm thinking, this guy's full of it. Congratulations, that's amazing. The boys still swim. That's cool. So again, let's give Danny another